Lives of the Presidents Told in Words of One Syllable by Jean S. Remy. John Adams. John Adams was born not in the far South with many slaves to wait on him, but on a small farm in Braintree, Massachusetts. Here, from Old England, had come in 1636 his great-grandfather, Henry Adams, and in this old home was born on October 19th, 1735, John Adams, who was to be the second President of the United States. Now, on this farm in the East, there was much work to be done, and few to do it. The folks who had made their homes here did not lead such lives of ease as those who lived on the great farms in the South. As a small boy, though, of course, he was taught to read and write, John Adams had a good deal of hard work to do. There was wood to chop and snow to be cleared away. There were horses and cows to care for. And there was much work to do in the fields. In all this work John took his part, like the brave, strong boy that he was. When the days grew long and cold, he was sent to an old school near his home. And here at once he took his place with the boys, as one who would lead in the fun and sport of all kinds. There was a good deal of fun, too, in those days, for boys and girls both. In the cold days there was good, strong ice on which to skate. There was snow to play in, and to make fine roads for long rides in a sleigh. And when the days were long and hot, there were fish in the big streams, and there was game in the wild woods. John was not fond of his books, but still he did good work at school, and when he was quite young, went to Harvard College. He left it in 1755, just at the start of the 7 Years' War, and the name of George Washington, the brave young colonel of Virginia, rang loud in his ears. He taught school in Worcester to earn the means to take up law, and in 1758 he became a lawyer. He had many cases and grew wise and great, though he did not make much money, as folks in the small town of Braintree were far from rich and paid small fees. But he did make many kind friends, and far and near he was known as a man of clear, strong mind and quick, bright thoughts. He had a fine, sweet voice, too, and his speeches were always wise and showed much thought. In the strife with England, he was from the start on the side of America. So much did England fear him in 1757, the English king sent word that he would give him great wealth if he would serve him at this time. Adams would not do this. He would speak and act just as he thought right, and be bound by no king. When the Stamp Act passed in 1764, he made a great speech, which was sent to those at the head of his state. And when in 1770 a troop of British fired on a mob of American men and boys in the streets of Boston, he took the case to the courts and spoke for the British captain and his men, though they had killed 5 of our men. It may seem strange to you that Adams, who stood for American rights, should here take sides with the British. But first of all, he stood for law, and though he knew he ran the risk of losing his high place in the hearts of American men, still he would do what he thought right. But men love truth, and like to see a brave man act as he thinks right, and so felt that he had just the clear, cool head and brain and the strong, warm heart to give aid in the dark days that were to come to the land. He was sent to the first Congress and was one of the 3 men who drew up the Declaration of Independence. He was also one of the 3 men to go to France and ask for the aid which she gave to America in the spring after that hard winter at Valley Forge. Do you see why this trip at this time was a brave act, and one by which Adams ran a great risk of losing his life? England had no wish that he should reach France, and her ships tried in vain to get him. If he had been caught, he would have been hung as a man who was false to his land and his king. You know that he went to France, though, and did his work well. He stood up for our rights, and had a bill passed which made the ports of France and England free to our goods. At the end of the war, he was sent to England to look out for our rights there, And though now this is a pleasant task, it was not then. For it was hard for Adams to be true to America and yet not anger the English king, George III. But we have seen how bold and brave a man he was. So the first thing he said to the king was, "I must tell your Majesty that I love no country but my own." And said the king, "An honest man will never love any other." In spite of this, Adams met with much rudeness at the English court. But he did his best for his country, and when he came home in 1787, after 12 years of hard work, he was met with great joy. He was made vice president with Washington, and at the end of Washington's term of office, he was made president. He served only 4 years and then made way for Thomas Jefferson. At the age of 68 years, with the love of the whole land, he went to his home in Quincy, Massachusetts. His heart was ever with his country, and he lived until his son John Quincy Adams was made President of the United States. His last thoughts were for his country. On June 30th, 1826, he gave as a toast for the great feast to be held on July 4th the words, "Independence forever." He died on the night of this, America's great day. His last words were of Jefferson. He said, "Thomas Jefferson still lives." But this was not so, for Jefferson had died a few hours before on this same day, and this young land wept for 2 of her great men, both of whom, in giving up their best to their country, helped to make it the great free land that it is today. End of chapter 2. Recording by Mark J. Peterson, Louisville, Kentucky, at markjpeterson.com.